Hey, folks, good morning and welcome to another episode of Steelers Morning Rush. It is Tuesday, April 22nd. I am in the parking lot of UPM Rooney Sports Complex where we are going to talk to Pittsburgh Steelers head coach Mike Tomlin and general manager Omar Khan in their annual pre-draft press conference in just a little bit. But I want to talk about something that I saw yesterday that I thought was really good, and I wanted to kind of give a shout out for it first and foremost. And then I wanted to talk about how I think it applies to the Pittsburgh Steelers. I shared a tweet yesterday from Mike Greenberg of ESPN. Was a clip of him on First Take, I believe it was, or whatever thing that he does in the morning on ESPN. As you can tell, I'm not a regular watcher of those types of shows, but he was talking about how if Shedeur Sanders falls down the draft board on Thursday night, there are going to be a lot of sob stories written about, oh, poor Shedeur falling down the board, things of that nature. But if you look at it, quarterbacks that are taken first overall or the first quarterback off the board often do worse than quarterbacks that are taken later. Now, and Greeny went on to give a ton of examples. Guys like Aaron Rodgers and Lamar Jackson and Patrick Mahomes, Jordan Love, Jalen Hurts, none of those were the first quarterback taken in their draft class. And there's been plenty of one-on-one guys, including the last 2 years. When you look at Bryce Young and Caleb Williams, you certainly would have rather had the second guy than the first guy in each of those classes as we sit right here today. So there's this historical precedent that, look, just being the first quarterback taken doesn't mean the second guy is chopped liver. And that's true. And Green didn't necessarily say this, but the implication is, look, the teams that are picking at one stink. There's a reason they're picking at one. They're awful. And they're not just going to turn it around from awful into great because you showed up. The things they did to get awful, they're probably going to continue to do. The reasons they were bad are going to carry over. And now you, as a young quarterback, are simply going to be a part of that and not something completely different. That's the implication of saying, yeah, guys, the first quarterback doesn't always go well. Which made me think, are the Pittsburgh Steelers a good landing spot for Shedeur Sanders? If Shedeur Sanders falls, will we be able to say, oh, well, he's better off than if he had gone number 2 to the stinking Browns or whatever? Will he be better off with Pittsburgh? And I think it's actually a fair indictment of where the Steelers are as an offense that I don't think the answer is a resounding yes. Maybe better off than the Browns just because it seems like they always find a way to screw up everything. But, like, hard to sit here and say better off than the Giants. Hard to sit here and say better off than the Jets or the Raiders. Like, the Saints. The Steelers have an offensive coordinator that was hired explicitly for his vision and ability to have a running offense. They hired the guy who built Derrick Henry. Sure, he had Ryan Tannehill, and sure, he had A.J. Brown, but he was hired first and foremost because of his ability to run the football. And the Steelers have drafted mostly with the idea of being a running team in mind, to the point that their number one wide receiver that just committed the biggest free agent contract in franchise history to, one of his top attributes is his blocking. They want to run the ball. And they don't have the kind of quarterback gurus that look like they're ready to get the most out of a young quarterback. They don't have anyone on the roster that's ever developed a young quarterback at the NFL level successfully, on their coaching roster, I should say. I mean, I like Tom Arth. I think he's a good guy. I think he's a good coach, but he hasn't done it. There's no reason to have faith in him doing it. I like Art Smith. I think he was a good hire for the Pittsburgh Steelers, but he hasn't done it, and there's no reason to have faith in him doing it. Mike Tomlin hasn't done it, and there's reasonable suspicion that he might not be very good at it if you look at what's happened at the quarterback position since Ben Roethlisberger left. So I agree with Greeny's point, and it was incredibly well said. And honestly, I think it was a good reminder of how good Mike Greenberg is at his job, despite the fact that ESPN doesn't seem to want to take its journalists seriously and they just want to shout at each other. A really, really well done video piece there. But I'm not sure it applies. Like, should we feel bad for Shedeur Sanders if he falls from one? Not necessarily. But should there be this huge sigh of relief because he gets to the Pittsburgh Steelers? I don't know. The one thing I will say is I think a big part of the reason Shedeur Sanders is falling is that coaches, especially coaches that are not in particularly stable situations, don't want to deal with drafting his father. They don't want to deal with Deion Sanders looking over their shoulder. They don't want to deal with people clamoring for him. They don't want to deal with what he might say, how he might question their decision making. Guys on the hot seat don't need to invite more criticism, especially from a guy like that, who very well could replace him. I know he has a new contract in Colorado, but coaching contracts were built to be broken. That won't be an issue in Pittsburgh. Mike Tomlin will handle that part of the business. Like, that is the one thing that you should be able to say about the Steelers and Shedeur Sanders is at least Deion won't be a distraction. At least a meaningful one for the team. The rest of it, I don't know. He needs development as a quarterback. He is not a made product. He's a good player, though. And I think people are underrating how good Shedeur Sanders is. But he will need coaching. And I don't know if the Pittsburgh Steelers are the best team for him. Like, okay, let's forget the bad teams. Let's talk about some other teams in the Steelers' neck of the woods. You tell me he'd be better off with the Steelers than the Vikings? You tell me he'd be better off with the Steelers than the Rams? You tell me he'd be better off with the Steelers than the 49ers? I'm not buying it. I'm not buying it. Now, I mean, nobody wants to be stuck behind a Allen or a Burrow or a Lamar, but like the teams I just named have relatively fluid future quarterback situations. Why not? Jared Goff isn't getting any younger. You think he'd be better with the Steelers in Detroit? Like, there are places he can go that I think are clearly like that answer, where it's like, oh, well, he fell in the draft, but look where he landed. Good for him. There are other places, and I think Pittsburgh's one of them, where it's like, well, we'll see. Is Seattle a better landing spot for a quarterback just because they're 18th and the Giants are 3? What have the Seahawks done that the Giants haven't done when it comes to their offense that should make us think that is somehow better? Like, I don't see it. So I think in one way, yes, it's a good fit because of the Deion aspect, but the rest of it, I think we should have some fair skepticism about the Steelers' offensive coaching staff's ability to develop a quarterback right up until they prove to us they can do it. That's all I got for today. Be back with more from Mike T and Omar. We'll have some video clips here on the YouTube channel. Make sure you like, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications for those. And then me and Smitty on Afternoon Drive right around 6 o'clock, so stay tuned for that. Until then, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Until next time.